Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor and Celebrity Spokesmodel for ClassicsToday.com and the new ClassicsToday.com merchandise shop, which you can check out on our homepage. So, today I am going to be talking about, get ready, you know what that is. Yes, it's Clemens Krauss. Yeah, I know. It's Clemens Krauss. You'll see the point in a second. The complete Decca recordings on Australian Eloquence. Another fantastic release by our dear friends down under. Now, Clemens Krauss is known basically these days for two things. Now, maybe three if you want to push it. His association with Richard Strauss and his conducting of the same, his Wagner, and also his Viennese things, like Strauss waltzes, his New Year's concert stuff and whatnot. He did actually quite a bit more. And his legacy has been rather well exploited by Decca and other labels over the years. But this is the first time that all of the Decca stuff has been gathered together in a single box. And as usual with a production from Australian Eloquence, complete really does mean complete. They got it all together. For example, you may have heard some of his Strauss previously because there was this Decca, the Clemens Krauss Strauss Decca box. Well, the problem was this was the Clemens Krauss Strauss Decca Vienna box, because not all of his Strauss was done with the Vienna Philharmonic, and this left that out. But this one, the newcomer, does not. So if you didn't get this, good for you. You don't need it. You can now get the bigger box with more stuff, and that's wonderful. So let's get rid of that. The other things that Clemens Krauss was known for, let's just say, was his fabulous ring, possibly the greatest ring ever in the eyes of many, although not the best sounding. This is from 1953. You should just be aware of the fact that it exists. And the Strauss stuff was exploited. In addition to being on Decca, it was all reissued on Testament. And the stuff that was not Vienna Philharmonic, which was not on Testament, was on Dutton. I mean, it's been around. And so a lot of you hardcore collectors probably already have it. And I will say, the sound is decent mono. These recordings all date from 1947 to 1953, which is actually when he died. I believe he died. He was on tour, 1954. So he didn't die in 1953. He died somewhere around there. He was on tour, I think, in Mexico City, and he just dropped dead. It was rather tragic and rather sudden. He died in 1954. So 1893 to 1954. He was young. He was 61. And he was also the librettist for Strauss's opera Capriccio. And if you are an enormous Clemens Krauss fan, a really gesunter Clemens Kraussian, you got this thing, 97 CDs on Veritas. And, I haven't listened to all of it, I have to tell you. Who has time? Some year I'll get to it, possibly. It does make a wonderful, building block, or, I could use it in the my next workout video. You can do these things with it, and it's very handy, but it's also very large. So let's talk about what actually the complete Clemens Krauss Decca stuff is. And he was a very, very fine conductor, particularly of Strauss, and most of the stuff in here is really, really very good. Although there have been some disagreements with my colleagues at ClassicsToday.com on the necessity of hearing these, and I think it's really a question of where you are in your phases of classical music recording, and how you feel about Richard Strauss particularly. Some of the other stuff is fairly essential, but let's just go through these and see what's in here. Oh, by the way, they are original jackets. One original jacket, and where they've mixed up albums, you get, all the original jackets for those of you who are original jacket aficionados. So, I mean, that's important for some people. Okay, we start with the Wiener Philharmoniker doing Beethoven Leonora Overtures numbers 1, 2, 3, and Fidelio, which is fun, and Piano Concerto number 2 with Wilhelm Backhaus, which is stodgy and boring and not terribly well played. And then we get Beethoven Piano Concerto number 4 and 5 with Wilhelm Backhaus of the Wiener Philharmonic, which are also rather stodgy and dull and not terribly well played. Backhaus remade these. This was none of their finer moments. And the recording dates were, 53, 51, somewhere in there. It's worth pointing out that at this point, the early 50s, late 40s, the Vienna Philharmonic was still in its rebuilding phase, having essentially self-destructed during World War II. And so the sound is kind of scruffy. I mean, the sound of the orchestra, the playing can be a little scruffy. The sonics are rather dry and wiry, but perfectly listenable. I mean, it's this listenable mono sound. And as I've said 100 million times, I have no trouble with mono sound as long as I can hear the music. And one of the things that Krauss was really very good at, although not in these Beethoven performances, except the overtures, there's some good stuff in the overtures, was his ability to clarify textures and his love of bringing out woodwind parts, not quite the way Klemperer did, but yes, he liked woodwinds. And so that's a good thing. And so we get to hear stuff. Next, we get Brahms, the Alto Rhapsody with Kathleen Ferrier, the divine Miss F, with the London Philharmonic, for those of you who are Kathleen Ferrier fans, and the Academic Festival Overture and the Haydn Variations. The Academic Festival and the Haydn Variations are with the London Symphony. And those are nice to have, I have to say. These were recorded in 47, and in that era. And then we have Hungarian Dances by Brahms, numbers 1 and 3, and Slavonic Dances, numbers 3, 5, and 8 by Dvorak. Now, these are not, are they competitive with the best that's out there? Nah, not really. I mean, but they're historical. That's not why you go for Clemens Krauss. You go for Clemens Krauss for the Richard Strauss stuff. Now let's talk about the Richard Strauss stuff. I've reviewed this stuff before on ClassicsToday.com with sound samples. You can go and look at it if you're an insider. You can listen to some samples. And Jed Disler reviewed the Testament series. And he and I disagreed somewhat and we didn't disagree about the quality of the performances so much as to their necessity. And that's an issue. That's an issue with historical recordings, because Richard Strauss, first of all, is not a composer given to profundity in his orchestral music. He's not the kind of guy who's going to respond to, a welter of interpretive insights in a way which is meaningfully different. And so, at the same time in the 50s, you had Reiner and Living Stereo, and then Kempe came along, who was a conductor very similar to Clemens Krauss. I mean, extremely similar in his overall approach to the music. And so, there have been so many great Strauss recordings since then, and they all sound better. And they're it's a question of whether you want to hear historical Strauss, because Strauss really does depend on quality of engineering and sonics, because you want to hear clarity, you want to hear the voluptuousness and sheen that the music has to offer. I mean, there's Karajan for sheen, God knows, Karajan for sheen, and all kinds of other exciting people who've done Strauss. And so I like these performances. And the reason I like them, and this is a purely personal thing, the reason I like them is because even though the orchestra is not fabulous, they're at its best, and even though the sonics were very shortly to be bettered by all kinds of people, not least Decca, the reason I think they're so interesting is because they make such a wonderful contrast to Strauss's own performances of the symphonic poems. Strauss was a terrible conductor of his own music. He said playing it bored him. And it sounds like that if you listen to his performances. He just sits there and beats time, and the orchestra does its thing, and the music is written to be kind of conductor-proof anyway. I mean, you can make it boring, but Strauss keeps it moving, and so they sound okay. But Krauss really treats it as though it's important music that deserves to have some thought and attention lavished on it. And like all really well-written music, it responds to that. It responds to that very well. One of the things he did not do with the Vienna Philharmonic, for example, is Death and Transfiguration. He did it with the London Philharmonic in the late 40s. Also, no great shakes orchestrally, but oh my, what a devil take the rules kind of interpretation it is. I mean, he treats that Transfiguration theme, he just milks it for all it's worth. It's like, oh my God, it's yes, well, you get the idea. I mean, he really goes for it. And, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a totally different approach to Strauss's music, and it's an approach where Strauss was all cool calculation. This is all emotional warmth and spontaneity. And if you compare them historically, you find that there really is a wide range of music, range of expression, that Strauss's music accommodates, which is a great thing to happen. If you love Strauss, then you'll want to hear these. I really believe you will, even though there's better sounding stuff elsewhere. So let's see what we got here. This whole set has, 16 CDs, and we're already on disc 4, and you get Don Juan, Till Eulenspiegel, and Ein Heldenleben. The Ein Heldenleben has got some great stuff in the battle. It's just so nasty. The critics are nasty, and the battle is colorful and cartoonish, which is what it should be. It's really cartoon music. This stuff, it really is. I mean, you've got, see, it's cartoon music. And I'll be nice. I'll stop now. I know that's terribly annoying, but it gets the point across, I think, in a way that no other instrumental approximation would. Okay, so CD 5 is Also sprach Zarathustra, as you heard at the beginning of this video. And then we get Don Quixote. And wow, is this a good Don Quixote? It's with Pierre Fournier. Yeah. And there's just some wonderful, wonderful moments. And the whole bit where the Don goes insane. I mean, the clarity of texture, partly because of the very close, kind of dry recording, but it's amazing sounding. It really does sound like the guy's going crazy. There's fantastic moments. And I play an excerpt from it in one of the ClassicsToday.com reviews of that box, the other box. So if you go and listen to it, you could hear some. And it's really rather cool. And then we get, the Sinfonia Domestica, which is wonderfully done, and a fabulous, absolutely fabulous performance of the Bourgeois Gentilhomme Suite, which it's just terrific. Absolutely terrific. I mean, it just makes me want to grab my kazoo, but I won't, I promised. Okay, so then we get Alsa Italian, also extraordinarily beautiful and well done. And then we have some of the earlier ones. We get the first Till Eulenspiegel, which is with the La Scala Orchestra, actually. And it's really rather interesting and entertaining to hear the La Scala Orchestra do Strauss at an earlier period. The timings for the two performances are almost identical, like to within a couple seconds. And the orchestral playing is remarkably fine in Italy. So it's really kind of fun. And then there's that Death and Transfiguration I was just telling you about. Finally, in the Richard Strauss division, for CDs 8 and 9, we get Salome. And this is a famous Salome. It's a really, really good Salome. Salome is Crystal Goltz. Now, Crystal Goltz was one of those Kunstdiva types. She did not have a particularly beautiful voice, but she sort of flung herself at the role, Maria Callas-like. And if her, lungs were ejected in the process and she lost a kidney, well, so be it. She didn't care. And you get, Julius Patzak is the tenor, and Johanan is Hans Braun. It's really, really fine. And everybody should hear this. If you love Salome, you really need to hear this. Now, Crystal Goltz went on to redo it. She redid Salome for Otmar Sweetener when she was even older. I mean, she must have been like 75 or something. She was way, way, way past her prime. But she never really had a prime. So it really didn't make any difference. The Sweetener Salome is also fabulous, by the way, although not so much for Salome. This one is her best performance, and it sounds quite good, too. It's a wonderful performance. It's the only complete Strauss opera, unfortunately, that Clemens Krauss did. And studio recording, that is. So you really should hear it. Then we get some Wagner excerpts. We get the Prelude and Liebestod from Tristan and Isolde, and the Parsifal Good Friday music, with the London Philharmonic. And then we have the concluding trio from Der Rosenkavalier with quite the cast. We get Tiana Lemnitz, who was a famous Nazi, and Erna Berger, and Viorica Orsuliak, who was Mrs. Clemens Krauss, and a wonderful Strauss singer, by the way. And that's with the Staatsoper Berlin, and this was recorded in 1936. Yes, 1936. And now let's see, what else do we have? We have Paul Schiffler, baritone, with the National Symphony Orchestra from 1947. And he's doing from Don Giovanni, De Vieni alla Finestra, and Si vol ballare from The Marriage of Figaro. And then we have an aria disc with the great Hilda Gudin, who was just, one of those Viennese stalwart singers, a wonderful ensemble singer, a wonderful Strauss singer. You've got a couple things from The Marriage of Figaro, a couple songs from Idomeneo, or arias, songs, whatever, airs. And then two from Rigoletto, including Caro Nome. Oh, boy. And they're lovely. They're just lovely. And then, let's see, we have some more operettas now. Some real Strauss operetta stuff. You've got a Fledermaus, a classic Fledermaus, a wonderful Fledermaus with Julius Patzak, Hilda Gudin, Alfred Pohl, Wilma Lipp, Sieglinde Wagner as Prince Orlovsky. What's not to love there, right? It's really good. Anton der Motta is in it. And, just the Vienna people from the 50s is what it is. So you get Die Fledermaus, and then you also get the Gypsy Baron, Die Zigeuner Baron, with basically the same cast. It's Alfred Pohl and Karl Donch, whatever his name is, Julius Patzak, and Emmy Luce. Isn't that nice to hear Emmy Luce? We only know Emmy Luce nowadays practically because she sang, I think, the finale of Mahler 4 with Paul Kletsky. I think she's in that one, but she was also a wonderful singer from that period. And yes, what's not to love? So you get the two Strauss operettas, and then 2 discs containing 3 New Year's concerts. And you know what's on the New Year's concerts disc. It's all Strauss and family stuff, where you get to see the horrifyingly rigid and frigid Viennese public clapping to the Radetzky March, going... Oh, it's just such a happy New Year. But the performances are wonderful, and as echt Viennese, idiomisch as it's possible to have. And that's what's in here. 16 beautifully presented discs with a nice booklet, and of course no text and translations because you don't get them, but all the rest of it's here. Really nicely put together. And if you are a fan of this period of the Vienna Philharmonic, particularly of some of the best immediate post-war work that they did, and of course of Richard Strauss and the other Strausses, that other crew, then you're definitely going to want Clemens Krauss, the complete Decca recordings. Just go for it and have a good time. You won't hear anything that sounds remotely like this. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Take care.